Maharishi, I just wanted to ask that when you spoke of unity consciousness, it was also described in the Gita that it's a state where one sees all beings in the self and the self in all beings. And it's also been described, as you have described it and commented on it and talked about it here, that one maintains an evenness of vision where all he sees is the self, and it's the self seeing the self, and it's all the self. You said yesterday that there's non-self and you just take the non off of it. And my question is, if one has a master who is in unity consciousness, how is it possible, granted the fact that greater activity has within it the ability to be less active, but can you go a little bit into the mechanics of how it's possible for a man who sees everything as pure joy, as pure bliss, and no differentiation in that, how is it possible for such a one to see problems in the world, to see the sufferings in the world, to be able to help people like that?
One thing is very important for us to understand, that a man in unity does not try to mix up. He has the reality of the object. Now, everything in terms of oneself, this is the reality of perception. Everything in terms of the self. Wherever the perception, everything in terms of the self. Anything that comes within the range of perception, that thing is in terms of the self. This does not mean that everything in terms of every other thing. There is a very fine difference in that, huh? X does not become Y. Mr. X is Mr. X different from Mr. Y. And Y doesn't become X, and X doesn't. There is no exchange on that level of the object. That means the difference that exists between object and object, it exists as long as object exists. Huh? Where is the drop of difference between the subjective and objective values? Not between the objective and objective value. There is the harmony of every object with the self. It's a very important point to understand. Otherwise, the state of unity will be creating a mess in the creation of the God who likes to enjoy the difference. The Creator has created the world in difference. Difference is his cherished play. And though the difference between the object and the object is not eliminated, what is eliminated is the lack of ability to enjoy the object in its infinite value. Lack of our ability to enjoy the infinite value of the object. This lack of our ability to enjoy the infinite value of the object, this lack drops off. So the difference between subjective and objective value, subjectivity and objectivity, this difference drops off. Harmony between the subjective aspect of life and objective aspect of life. The harmony between the subjective aspect of life and objective aspect of life. This harmony becomes more and more and more and more, and it becomes more than the most infinite, eternal, unshakable harmony between the self and the non-self. This does not erase the difference that naturally exists in the different values of the object. This is very important. Therefore, unity consciousness, when we say consciousness, unity consciousness is unity consciousness. It's not unity matter. It's unity consciousness on the level of consciousness. It is the diversified consciousness. Diversified consciousness means subjective and objective values, this evaluation. Gross and subtle and subtler and subtlest, these varying abilities of perception of the object. These varying abilities of the perception of the object. These varying abilities belong to the field of consciousness. And when we say unity consciousness, we mean consciousness has gained a state where these varying qualities no more exist. It's unity, non-variable ability to evaluate everything in terms of infinity. Now, the ability is non-variable. Consciousness is non-variable. Consciousness will evaluate everything in the infinite value. And the infinite value is the value of the self, which one has already been experiencing since one has gained CC. So that state of awareness with which one is familiar since one has gained CC, that now becomes non-variable. Because from CC it varied into GC, and now another state of variation and unity. And now in this state, that consciousness is not going to change anymore. It is non-variable. That is why we say unity consciousness. Now it's not going to go through the steps of change or modification. No more modification in that state of consciousness possible. The highest development of consciousness has been gained, and there are no more chances for any further development of consciousness, and we say this is that plateau that has been reached. Nothing is higher than this plateau. Nothing is more than this plateau, consciousness of unity. No more chances of modification. In this state of consciousness, every object is viewed in terms of infinite value, same value in which the subject has been experienced so far. The self has been experienced as non-variable awareness throughout the state of CC. Everything was being experienced, but the self remained uninvolved. And this non-variable state of the self, this state of consciousness, is now established forever, even with reference to all the objects in UC, unity consciousness. And then we say unity consciousness. The awareness of the self is no more varying when the object is open to perception, because the object also has omnipresent being. The omnipresent being, being is omnipresent. The being is omnipresent. Now, when being is omnipresent, then all this and this and this and these localized values, green, white, this much diameter, this width, this, all these space and time dimensions, they are localized values. Now, when everything in terms of the self means everything in terms of the infinite, then all the localized values in terms of the unlocalized value of infinity. So when the awareness has been developed, that awareness which was with reference to the self in the state of cosmic consciousness, that awareness has developed with reference to the objects as well. So same familiar unboundedness of the self, when it is undisturbed with all the localized perceptions, then we say unity consciousness is established. That means now the consciousness is not or cannot be open to any variations. No more modifications, no more development of consciousness possible. And this consciousness, which has the same value for the object of perception as it has for the subject of perception, same consciousness, then we say unity. It does not mean that the difference between object and object is eliminated. No. Only the evaluation of the object in terms of its own reality. Infinite value is the reality of the object. Just as sap is the reality of this red carnation. Colorless sap is the reality of this red carnation. So if someone gets into a habit of recognizing the colorless sap in the red carnation, then he is capable of appreciating the inner reality of the surface of the carnation. Same thing, when one is capable of evaluating the infinite value of the finite object, then one is capable of appreciating that content of the object of which it is made. The object is made of infinite value. The finite is made out of the finite, of the infinite. The finite is structured in the value of the infinite. So if one cognizes the finite in terms of the infinite, it's only reasonable and true. If one is not able to cognize the sap in the red carnation, then one is incapable of evaluating total value of incarnation. He is missing that out of which this has been structured. And in this sense, his ability is very much insufficient. And when he is able to cognize or realize the value of the sap in the value of the red carnation, then his ability is more complete. When one is able to appreciate the infinity out of which all finite values have been structured, then he is his vision is more complete. His vision has reached the absolute value, so that he does not at any time lose sight of the infinite value out of which the finite values have been structured. So the state of unity, consciousness, non-variable consciousness, where there is no more chance of any amendments, variations, improvements, progress, development, then you say unity consciousness. And that unity consciousness has the same value of awareness which one has been experiencing since CC has been gained, and now the difference is that it is transplanted in the field of objectivity as well, whereas before it was only, so to say, localized in the unboundedness of the self alone. It was localized in the unboundedness of the self alone, and now that localized boundary which was restricted to the self has been as if transplanted in the localized value of the non-self. This is all that has happened when CC has grown into UC. But the relationship of the object with another object remains completely unaltered, object with the object. Differences remain, but as regards the subject, the difference between the subject and the object does not remain, in the sense that harmony dominates and differences do not dominate. Matter of domination. Not that the differences completely dissolve, only they don't dominate, one doesn't bother about the differences, one accepts everything in terms of oneself, and that is enough for the unity consciousness to be a living reality of day-to-day life.
Just two more points of
two
more points of further refinement in the same context. When Maharishi, when you say sees,
yes.
And in God consciousness, when you said that, when you said that the finest level of the relative is appreciated on the level of the gross. Now, does that mean that you've also mentioned different things happening in the body because of purity, the digestive system is...
Of course, because the perception is only the outcome of the functioning of the nervous system. So more efficient functioning of nervous system alone raises our value of evaluation.
Right. Now, from a physiological point of view,
yes.
with the eyes, when I'm looking at my pen, now in GC, when I'd be looking at this same pen, if it's still here, my eyes would be actually seeing the rapidly and constant changing movement of the electrons or whatever like that? Is it like that actual type of seeing? Physiological type seeing?
Just compare the vision of a friend in the state of stress and when we are unstressed. In the stress, we impose all bad to him. In the relaxed bliss consciousness, he is all good. Just that much difference. The value of a thing is very, very great and loving and attractive and everything in God consciousness. Not that we look at moving electrons and all that.